Part 28. Different Dimension Red Alert World. Author, Sanqian Lang. Chapter 271. Zheng Kui was really frightened now. He had no fighting spirit in his heart. He was even afraid that Wang Ling would hold on to this matter. After subduing a large number of ruffians, he became a local snake. Although Zheng Kui was a bit aggressive, he was definitely not a fool. He knew who he could mess with and who he couldn't mess with. Although Wang Ling did not personally admit that the mental pressure just now was his masterpiece, these gangsters could guess it. Otherwise, why would he appear at this time and only target them? Experts will know if there is a trick as soon as they take action. Zheng Kui is very frightened by this method. People like Wang Ling are too mysterious and scary, and they cannot afford to mess with him. As for Wang Ling, he still crossed his arms and said with a playful smile, "Why are these three words so reluctant?" When Zheng Long heard this, he clenched his teeth involuntarily and held back those three words. It was already the limit, and too much was not enough. If Wang Ling continued to exert pressure, he would not even be able to resist forcefully. However, Wang Ling did not continue to embarrass him. He smiled and shook his head. "Forget it, it's not a big grudge against you. I don't need to fight you to the end. As long as you don't mess with me again in the future, I won't bother to go. I've caused trouble for you, let's just forget about it." Huh, Zheng Kui breathed a sigh of relief when he heard this. The other ruffians also felt relieved and finally no longer had to fight. Even though they were just looking for fights when they had nothing to do all day long, they didn't want to participate in a situation where they clearly wanted to avoid being beaten. The most important thing is that since the mental pressure just now, they have really felt death. If they fight with Wang Ling, the consequences will be like adding blood to the tip of the knife. They simply cannot bear it. But when everyone relaxed, Wang Ling suddenly changed his tone, which made these ruffians feel a little stunned in their hearts. Is this monster really not going to let them go? Although this matter has been exposed, you have to clean up the damage you caused. As he spoke, Wang Ling casually glanced at the collapsed school retractable door. As soon as they heard about this, many scoundrels breathed a sigh of relief. Zheng Kui even gritted his teeth and promised, "I'll apologize. I'll ask someone to reinstall a stronger one tomorrow. It's just a retractable railing door, but they can still get the money." "Okay, open," Wang Ling smiled, and then made a please gesture to the outside of the school. "Then, you can go back to where you came from. It is inappropriate for such a group of people to block the school entrance." "Hey, okay. Little brother, we have a character like you in this area. My face is also bright, brother. If anything happens in the future, please remember to contact me at any time." Before leaving, Zheng Kui did not forget to get close to each other and exchanged mobile phone numbers with Wang Ling. Then he quickly left the school with a group of juniors in disgrace. Zheng Long was also in the crowd, but before turning the corner and retreating, he alone turned his head and glanced at Wang Ling. There was some fear in this glance, but more of it was still unwillingness and even some hatred. This matter has been exposed by Zheng Kui, but obviously, Zheng Long will probably have some trouble here. However, Wang Ling didn't care much. The soldiers were coming to cover up the water and the earth. Even the Red Alert world had fought so many wars. How could he still be afraid of these threats? So far, this matter is over for the time being. When they arrived, they were arrogant and domineering, but when they left, they were shabby and frightened. It was a bit of an anticlimax, and all the onlookers felt that they were unable to turn around. Why did these ruffians come? You're here to apologize with all your might and force? Sometimes it is not always clear to bystanders. They had not experienced the terror of Wang Ling's mental coercion before, and had no idea how scared those ruffians were. To outsiders watching the excitement, they just found it a bit unbelievable and did not understand the inside story at all. However, it was a real matter that these ruffians were scared away and had to compensate for the damage to the school gate. After the ruffian army left, after a while, the onlookers finally started to make an uproar again. Zhang Shenke walked to Wang Ling's side in confusion, looked outside the school, and asked stupidly, Is this solved? Otherwise, Wang Ling asked with a smile. Wei Bowen suddenly said, Did they eat shit today? Are they just here to make fun of you? Ha ha ha, this statement is powerful, I think so. Dongfang Yuking and Sun Tongtong laughed hard. Anyway, this troublesome matter has finally come to an end. Wang Ling stretched out comfortably and didn't want to stay here any longer. However, the other people were still talking. Wang Ling didn't want the situation to get too big, so he simply advised, Dear students, what happened just now is a private matter between me, Zhenglong and Zheng Kui. Look at the excitement. That's good, don't talk nonsense everywhere, I'm a bit troublesome, and if it reaches Zheng Kui's ears, I might even fix you in private, it's quite a headache. Upon hearing that Zheng Kui might cause trouble, the expressions of this group of people also changed, and they all said they would keep their mouths shut. Although Zheng Kui is a bit showy and even a little faceless in front of Wang Ling, his reputation as a local snake is still relatively easy to use in the school. No one wants to have anything to do with Zheng Kui. After all, not everyone has Wang Ling confidence. After persuading him, Wang Ling finally had nothing else to do, so he took his roommates and went out to eat. After they left, the onlookers were still in an uproar for a while, and then gradually dispersed. After Wang Ling's persuasion and warning, this group of people naturally did not dare to publicize tonight's events in a big way, but everyone has a few friends, so small-scale spread is inevitable. You haven't seen it? How ferocious those gangsters were at that time. The school's big retractable door was pushed down as soon as it was pushed. A large group of people from all walks of life came to look for trouble. Tisk, tisk, this scene is quite scary when you think about it. Is that Wang Ling scared? Don't worry, I haven't finished yet. After that Zheng Kui asked who Wang Ling was, Zheng Long went out to identify him, and guess what? Wang Ling and that Zheng Kui know each other. Ah! Let me tell you, how can you have the confidence to provoke Zheng Long? It turns out that you know his brother. If you do this, you should not be able to fight. At best, you can just apologize. At worst, you can kneel down and beg for mercy, and then be beaten. Is it okay to just kick him in the circle? It stands to reason that this should be the case. Those ruffians also made this request, but something strange happened suddenly. These ruffians didn't know what was wrong with them suddenly. They were so aggressive one moment, and then seemed to be all over the place the next moment. They all seemed frightened and suddenly became submissive. That Zheng Kui kept saying it was a misunderstanding, but in the end it was Zheng Long who apologized. Different Dimension Red Alert World. Author, Sanqian Lang. Chapter 272. What? Are you right? A group of people suddenly changed their attitude and asked Zheng Long to apologize. Do you think I am a fool? You are the humming fool. Oh no, I said you were a fool. Haha, what the hell? This is how the plot develops. Don't talk about you. When we saw it with our own eyes, we all felt a little stupid. What is this? Tell me about the situation. Really? Haha, that's worth pondering. A large group of ruffians suddenly changed their attitude from aggressive to submissive. After thinking about it, there seems to be only one possibility. What's possible? What else could it be? Of course they saw something or something they were afraid of. Huh? That makes sense, but we were also there at the time, so what if we didn't see Wang Ling? Are you looking at Wang Ling from all directions? Or are you standing behind him? Of course he was standing behind him. Hey, when you say that, It makes sense. Wang Ling faced them head on. Maybe he suddenly showed something scary. We didn't see it. Those ruffians saw it. Here we are, that's why we're so scared. Hey, yes, that must be the case. What could that be that could make a bunch of ruffians so scared? It's hard to say. By the way, I just thought that what he showed might be his identity. What identity? It's hard to say what his identity is. But it can be inferred that Zheng Kui is already a local snake here, and he has a lot of followers, and he can still be scared by Wang Ling. What identity can have such a deterrent effect? After thinking about it, there should be two possibilities. One is that Wang Ling may be related to the Ministry of Public Security, but I think this is not a big enough deterrent to those ruffians. The most likely thing is that Wang Ling may be a person on the road. Huh? People on the road. Really? This is my guess. Whether it's true or not, I can't say for sure. However, regardless of whether it's true or not, in short, don't provoke Wang Ling, and try to be as good as you can. Similar conversations have spread in a short period of time. When these people talk about what happened tonight, they are full of strong doubts. However, most of them just knew about it but didn't know why. They just talked and listened, just having fun and wondering together, but there were also a few people who guessed something based on the wind and shadow. As a result, Wang Ling's Taoist identity was quietly spread within this smaller area. If Wang Ling knew about it, he might not know whether to laugh or cry. However, no matter how lively the school was, Wang Ling didn't pay much attention to it. Zheng Kui's gang came to make trouble. This was really nothing to Wang Ling. It was just a small episode at best. After the incident was over, he put it behind him and was now eating dinner at a food stall with his roommates. Wang Ling was very indifferent, but those roommates, including Sun Tongtong, were still confused. They all expressed that they could not understand Wang Ling. Zhang Shenke even grabbed Wang Ling and asked him about it, but Wang Ling's answer, "But it really makes people speechless. This is called momentum, using force to overwhelm others, and defeating them without fighting. Those gangsters we met before when we were eating were his men. At that time, I took the opportunity to kill Zheng Kui. After being beaten, he has a shadow in his heart now." Zhang Sheng and the others were speechless. They were still deeply impressed by what happened when they provoked the gangsters. They all just thought that the matter would be settled. But now it seems that it is not the case. Instead, Wang Ling was asked to block it down. However, to say that Wang Ling beat up Zheng Kui was just bragging. This statement was so false that they couldn't tell the truth from the lie for a while. Since Wang Ling was fine, they simply didn't ask any more questions. After dinner, a few people returned to school and went for a casual walk on the playground. It was a normal scene at first, but many people they met on the way took the initiative to say hello to Wang Ling, and their attitude was even a little attentive. The most important thing is that there are many people among them who Wang Ling doesn't know at all. Of course, some people were timid and were a little scared when they saw Wang Ling and stayed away. Wang Ling originally wanted to keep a low profile as much as possible, but who made him feel like he was a big figure and provoked others. As a result, after stepping on Zheng Long and Zheng Kui, he has become somewhat famous in this school. Wang Ling said that this change was difficult to accept for a while. After barely coping with it and walking around casually, a few people returned to the dormitory and continued their previous entertainment and life. Taking advantage of this make-up physical fitness test, Zhang Shenke and Wei Bowen took 3 consecutive days of leave from their work. Naturally, they couldn't waste it. They spent most of their time in entertainment and carnival. Wang Ling did not go to Hong Kong in the past few days. Police world, concentrate on accompanying them crazy these past few days. People who enter society often feel helpless and cannot help themselves. Although these 2 people were only temporary workers, they still had to keep time. After 3 days of entertainment, the two people finally left the school one after another. As for Dongfang Yuking and Sun Tongtong, these two people were very smart. They went out for a trip and were dropped off at the airport by Wang Ling himself. Dongfang Yuking asked Wang Ling if she wanted to hang out with him, but Wang Ling refused. It's a joke, traveling with a couple, you will not be treated like dog food all the way, and you may even be treated as a light bulb, not to mention how awkward it is. Moreover, isn't the world of Red Alert itself a kind of alternative tourism? Speaking of the Red Alert world, Wang Ling hasn't been there for some time since he switched to Yuri's army. This time he sent several of them away one after another. That night, Wang Ling finally resumed his original work and rest habits. Lying on the bed, I entered the world of Red Alert. When I left the Red Alert world last time, the two major coalition bases had arrived at the headquarters, and after some meetings and arrangements, I met Yuri afterwards. Wang Ling asked General Li Wiki to tell the coach that night to be careful about Yuri. I don't know if this sentence has been brought to him now, and whether it has aroused the coach's attention or suspicion. But regardless of the outcome, Wang Ling has tried his best here. When they returned to the Red Alert world, the two bases were resting for the last night outside the General Command base, and Wang Ling was lying in the tent with the members of the Wolf team. Normally, all this is normal, but Wang Ling had been away for a while and had just returned, and he also brought the skills of Yuri's army. He actually felt a little playful, turned around, and then faced the entire camp of the Wolf team. The mental force field was released. As for the members of the Wolf team, some of them had already fallen asleep, while others were either chatting or trying to fall asleep with their eyes closed. However, the sudden arrival of this mental force field startled everyone, even those who had been sleeping soundly were woken up. However, to Wang Ling's expectation, this group of people did not show any fear. Instead, they shouted enemy attack, then got up one after another, got dressed, and shouldered their guns. It's time to rush out to find the enemy. Wang Ling caused such a havoc, and when he saw the reaction of this group of people, he couldn't help but become happy. Ha ha ha, look at how nervous you are. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Different Dimension Red Alert World. Author, Sanqian Lang. Chapter 273. A group of people were a little confused when they heard Wang Ling's joy. They looked at Wang Ling involuntarily. Seeing his cheerful look, they remembered something. The conversion of arms in the different dimensional system can be said to forcibly change the plot of the game, just like a bug is implanted out of thin air. All characters related to Wang Ling in the game will learn about Wang Ling's changes at the same time without feeling strange. Now that Wang Ling had the psychic force skill, of course the people in the Wolf team already knew about it. When they learned that they had just been fooled, one of the group of people was not angry, so they went up and kicked Wang Ling. Of course, it wasn't a real kick. They didn't dare to rebel. It was mostly a joke. In short, they just seized this opportunity to get revenge on Wang Ling. This also shows that Wang Ling usually has no airs at all. If he were another captain, how could any team member dare to joke with him like this? After the circle kick, Wang Ling had no choice but to admit defeat, and then Sun Dehu complained, "Captain, tell me, you are such a big man, why are you still playing like a child?" Li Tong also rubbed his temples, "Captain, please don't be so surprised, okay? Spare our fragile hearts." Suan Wu and I were chatting when suddenly I thought it was an enemy attack. Others were also complaining, but these complaints were normal. Only Erlu's words made the whole camp happy, "Captain, I hate you. I had already fallen asleep just now. Ha ha ha." Originally, people were still complaining, but after these godlike words came out, the entire camp suddenly burst into laughter. Wang Ling was even a little sweaty. There is a saying that a spring night is worth 1,000 pieces of gold. This disturbed other people's sweet dreams. It seemed quite annoying. But the second donkey was still shouting, "Captain, it's been more than 20 years and I haven't gotten married yet. I came to fight without even touching a girl's hand. I don't even know if I can go back alive. It's rare to be it's a spring dream, but it doesn't work in reality, so you're better off. Ha 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 ha. Donkey, he's crazy about his wife, isn't he? Donkey is truly a god. Even his dreams are so earth-shattering. The others laughed even louder, but Wang Ling was particularly embarrassed. Fortunately, at this time, the people who came to help the siege, the wolf team, were enjoying themselves, when suddenly there was the sound of footsteps outside. Not long after, someone suddenly opened the wolf team's tent. When they saw the person, Hu Ben. Of course, Hu Ben was only responsible for setting up the tent. Behind him, there were a large number of soldiers, all holding submachine guns and standing ready. Good guy, the people in the wolf team were frightened awake before, and the enemy attack was heard. The power was really overwhelming. These people on the scene are all soldiers with blood on the tip of their swords, and they are particularly sensitive to enemy attack. Upon hearing some disturbance, he quickly entered a state of preparation for war. But this is the result. What's going on with you guys? Why are you so happy? Where is the enemy? Hu Ben was confused for a while and asked blankly. When he asked, in the crowd at the rear, several captains such as Chen Tong and Sun Chiming also came forward. After looking at it, their faces became a little ugly. Are you kidding us? Wang Ling apologized awkwardly, misunderstanding. Sun Dehui did not hesitate to reveal his shortcomings. Why are we playing with you? Even we are being played. Just ask the captain. Good guy, they put up mental pressure in the camp. I thought the enemy was coming. It's over. Chen Tong. Hu Ben. Sun Chiming. All other officers and soldiers preparing for war. I was startled by the sound of enemy attack and got up in great force. In the end, was it because of this? I'm talking about brother Wang Ling. Hu Ben was a little angry. Can you stop this joke? Is it easy for brothers to fight on this battlefield until now? It's rare to relax and recuperate, but you still have to get us up in the middle of the night for training. Do you have a good conscience? Misunderstanding, it's really a misunderstanding. Wang Ling felt guilty. This was really embarrassing. There's really nothing I can do against you. There won't be a next time, or I'll cripple you. Chen Tong glared at him and led the rest of the Eagle squad back to the camp. Then Hu Ben, Sun Chiming and others also sighed helplessly and led the others. Returned. It's finally over. What a fuss this made. The members of the wolf team also spread their hands, and finally warned the cheap captain to stop fooling around, and then they each lay down. As the saying goes, shameless people are invincible. Wang Ling made such a big mistake. After being embarrassed for a while, he felt no psychological burden. After everyone lay down, he was still sighing. This person is different from other people. This mental force field is basically a godlike skill in reality. Under the pressure, all those targeted will be trembling with fear, even those ruffians. The army is no exception. But in this red alert world, it seems to be useless, and no one is afraid of this coercion. I think so. Who are the people Wang Ling comes into contact with in the world of red alert? They are all soldiers, all warriors. Which one has not experienced the baptism of the battlefield? This mental pressure fell on them. At most, it only allowed them to relieve the cruelty and terror of the battlefield. It had no deterrent effect on them at all. The psychic power is still too weak. Yuri's skills are so powerful in reality, but they are completely useless here. But how should this psychic power be improved? Wang Ling muttered these questions, but he couldn't imagine the result no matter how hard he thought about it. In the end he simply stopped thinking about it, closed his eyes, tilted his head, and fell asleep directly. When they woke up the next day, the troops started their morning jog again. After running a few kilometers, the troops took turns to have breakfast. After a brief rest after the meal, the two bases dismantled all the tents and gathered them together. After yesterday's rest, the personnel at the two bases are now full of energy and ready for more brutal battles. Next, the two major coalition bases will set off to the front line of the decisive battlefield. But just when the troops were about to leave, a figure slowly walked out of the general command base. Upon closer inspection, it turned out to be Yuri. Yuri looked around. After seeing Wang Ling's team, he smiled slightly, showing no emotion or anger, and then walked straight towards Wang Ling. Different Dimension Red Alert World. Author, Sanqian Lang. Chapter 274. Although this Yuri is not wearing a rank epaulet, judging from the conversation with the coach yesterday, this guy's status in the headquarters is no worse than that of the coach. The sudden appearance of such a figure naturally attracted everyone's attention immediately. Even the large troops of Major General Li Wiki and Major General Luo Er had to stop and give Yuri a military salute from a distance. Among them, Wang Ling was the most sensitive. When he saw Yuri, he frowned deeply and felt a little uneasy in his heart. You know, he asked General Li Wiki to privately inform the coach yesterday to be careful about Yuri. Today Yuri appeared alone, and it seemed that he was coming for Wang Ling. How could he not be vigilant? I'm afraid the person who came here is evil. Could it be that the news was exposed and Yuri found out? Otherwise, why would he come to me specifically? With this question in his mind, Wang Ling did not show it. He tried his best to suppress the anxiety in his heart and followed the others to perform a military salute. Yuri did not return the greeting, but nodded slightly, passed through the heavy army, and finally stopped in front of Wang Ling and examined him. To be honest, Wang Ling is afraid of Yuri from the bottom of his heart. As a player, he has also experienced Yuri's troop conversion. Of course, he knows how terrifying this troop is. The shock wave it releases when deployed at close range is enough to instantly kill all nearby infantry, including Wang Ling. Are you scared? Am I that scary? Yuri looked at Wang Ling for a while, smiled slightly, and asked this question. Wang Ling didn't know what Yuri meant, so he quickly corrected his posture and said, Sir, I'm just a captain. Your status is too high. In front of me, I will inevitably feel a little oppressed. Anyway, he couldn't reveal his wariness towards Yuri, so he could only sound cowardly. But obviously, Yuri didn't take this trick, and said with a mocking smile, Do you think I'm stupid? For this reason, I might believe it when others say it, but when you say it, I won't believe a word of it. Wang Ling was speechless for a moment and didn't know how to answer. Fortunately, Yuri came today not to embarrass him. He just smiled and said, Don't be so nervous, I won't eat you. I just heard that you have been trained by the psychic army, but the training results but it's very unsatisfactory, whether it's mind control or shock waves, they are far from the passing standard, right? The feelings came from this matter. After hearing this, Wang Ling breathed a sigh of relief, and then pretended to be ashamed and replied, Yes, sir, the gap between my psychic power and the psychic troops is too big to complete the training. Embarrassing you? He. Yuri was not surprised and said with relief, There is nothing to be ashamed of. Psychic power is usually something you are born with and can rarely be developed. However, with the help of some special means, it is possible to amplify it can barely meet the passing standard. For example, this thing. As he spoke, Yuri pointed to the metal device on his head. This thing is not a decoration. As Yuri said, this thing can amplify spiritual power. Almost everyone in the psychic army is equipped with it. Those who can be selected into the psychic army are those who are born with very strong psychic power. Coupled with this amplifying device and training for a period of time, it is easy to reach the passing standard of the psychic army. However, Wang Ling did not have this thing. In other words, if Wang Ling could install this thing, he might not be able to become a member of the psychic army. This was indeed a temptation for Wang Ling. Thinking of this, Wang Ling's eyes became a little hot. And then, Yuri continued, "You can stay and follow me. I can install this device for you myself. Others cannot exercise your spiritual power, but I can. When the time comes, your spiritual power is powerful enough, and I happen to need a second in command. Good guy, this is a direct olive branch. He is truly the leader of the psychic army." Yuri's eyes are so vicious. When he saw Wang Ling for the first time yesterday, he recognized Wang Ling's uniqueness. However, Wang Ling changed his arms and hooked up with Yuri. Relationship, Yuri only came up with this idea today. As for the method of training his spiritual power, it is quite simple. He uses his mental power to pressure Wang Ling every day, making him passively hone and grow. Yuri's mental power is already terrifying, but he also has a mental power amplification device, so he can train it in such an arrogant way. Otherwise, no one else would be able to help Wang Ling. When everyone else heard Yuri's words, they all cast envious glances at Wang Ling, and the two major generals were even more unbelievable. Yuri is here, and his status is only higher than that of the coach. Being able to become Yuri's deputy is definitely a leap in the sky, and at the same time he can avoid the cruelty of war. This is for any soldier, it's all an absolute temptation. However, Wang Ling was not in this group. After listening to Yuri's words, he felt a surge of emotion in his heart. He gritted his teeth and made a decision. "Thank you for your respect, sir, but I'm sorry to obey. The battlefield is the arena for my performance. Men should fight on the battlefield, even if they die in battle, they will not hesitate." Although what he said was so righteous and awe-inspiring, in fact, it was just an excuse. After all, Wang Ling is a player, and real life is the main thing. The red alert world is just a support. How can he leave his life in this place? He said this, but he just wanted to completely eliminate Yuri's ideas. In the game, Yuri will appear as a villain in the future after all. Wang Ling has to be wary of that powerful mind control. He has every reason to doubt that if Yuri is really allowed to install a mental amplification device on him, I will take this opportunity to completely control Wang Ling. In the red alert world, losing consciousness is not considered death, but what is the difference between it and death? Without consciousness, the body in real life becomes a vegetative state. This result was really too terrible. Although it was possible that Wang Ling was being careless, he could never gamble. Even if he gave up all of Yuri's skills, he still couldn't leave his life to Yuri. Of course, other people did not know about Wang Ling's concerns. When they heard Wang Ling's rejection, they all widened their eyes. Their expressions were filled with disbelief and strong impatience. If the scene was not inappropriate, I am afraid that the members of the Wolf team would. There are many people who want to scold him. What a great opportunity, just give up. Major General Li Wiki, Major Zhao Pingwang, and Major Rovsky glanced at each other, and their eyes flickered. Last night Wang Ling asked Major General Li Wiki to inform the coach that he should be careful about Yuri, but today he directly rejected Yuri's olive branch. This was a perfect opportunity to soar into the sky, so I just gave it up. It seemed that Wang Ling was indeed more wary of Yuri than they imagined. But why? Different Dimension Red Alert World. Author, Sanqian Lang. Chapter 275. After Wang Ling showed his prowess on the battlefield and established a great reputation, he became famous in the base. As commanders, Major General Li Wiki and the others had of course carefully checked Wang Ling's past. In this red alert world, Wang Ling has a separate identity, but this identity is very ordinary and has nothing outstanding. He has never been exposed to war-level things, and it is even less likely that he has come into contact with Yuri in advance. But why is he so wary of Yuri? This question popped up in the minds of the three of them, but they couldn't figure it out. However, Wang Ling is indeed unique. His previous performance on the battlefield gave him a sense of knowing himself and his enemy. There were so many magical things about him, and now that he was wary of Yuri, they had no choice but to become suspicious. Is there really something wrong with this Yuri? Although this doubt flickered, the three of them remained calm, and no one was stupid enough to point it out. As for Yuri, when he heard Wang Ling's words, he also raised his eyebrows with a surprised expression. To be able to become his deputy, and to be invited by him personally, how much dignity and good luck does it take to be able to become his deputy? No one else had such an opportunity, but this opportunity was given to this young man, and he was rejected. After regaining his composure, Yuri asked with some reluctance, "If you can become my deputy, your status will definitely skyrocket, and the cruelty of war will hardly affect you. This opportunity is not available to everyone. If you miss it, you may not get it again in the future. Are you sure you want to refuse?" Wang Ling had already made up his mind. Who cares about this? He immediately refused again and said, "Sure, sir. I'm going to die. It's my destiny to fight and kill on the battlefield. But to become the commander's deputy, I don't have that kind of fate and strength. Thank you, sir, for your respect." Well, after being rejected again, there was nothing Yuri could do about him. After taking a deep look at Wang Ling, Yuri sighed and shook his head. "Aren't you a bit stupid? That's all. Since you don't want to, I won't force you. I look forward to your excellent performance on the battlefield." "Yes, sir," Wang Ling responded quickly. Yuri nodded slightly, said no more, turned around and left here, returned to the headquarters, and soon disappeared. This great god finally left. Many officers and soldiers present breathed a sigh of relief, but many people still looked at Wang Ling with some regret. Next, it was officially time for the army to set off. The commanders of the two bases immediately issued the order to set off. The two torrents of steel advanced in order and left the map in about an hour. The General Command Base is located at the rear of the decisive battlefield. After leaving here, it still takes several hours of marching to reach the decisive battle map. Along the way, there are many mountains, rivers, woods, and rivers. The terrain is quite complicated. It was originally difficult to march. However, many base troops have passed by in recent days, and more than one road has been forcibly opened up, making it convenient to march. A lot, as the old saying goes, there is no road in this world, but when more people walk on it, it becomes a road. Wang Ling was originally running with the team, but as he was running, he suddenly received a radio message from Xiaoping Wang asking him to go to the base car alone. What can happen if we go to the base car at this time? Wang Ling didn't think too much for a while. He sped up and caught up with the base vehicle and rushed in. After seeing several officers, he gave a military salute. After Major General Li Wiki returned the gift, he didn't mince words and went straight to the point and asked, "Wang Ling, Commander Yuri's invitation, you just refused it? This is what feelings are about." Wang Ling was still as righteous as when he faced Yuri. "Sir, my mission is to kill on the battlefield. I can cut off my head, but I can also bleed." "Stop, stop," but this time, before he had finished speaking, King Xiaoping quickly interrupted him. "We know that you are upright and upright, right? Don't keep saying this to us all day long, we listen to the truth." Major General Li Wiki asked, "Yes, last night you asked me to inform the coach to be careful about Yuri. Is this related to it?" Wang Ling thought for a moment and nodded slightly. "That's right." "But why? Commander Yuri is a high-ranking member of our coalition forces. You have never seen him before. Why are you so wary of him? Finally asked the question that had been bothering them for a long time. Wang Ling took a deep breath and replied, Sir, Yuri is very ambitious. Although he is currently serving the coalition forces cannot satisfy his ambitions. In the future, Yuri and even the entire psychic army may be enemies rather than friends. Good guy, if you say that, aren't you afraid of being arrested and charged with disrupting military morale? Major General Li Wiki and the three others were also shocked after hearing this. However, Major General Li Wiki and Zhao Pingwang were obviously not so rigid. Only Rowski asked, but why do you say that? Is there any basis for it? Wang Ling had no way to answer this question. No excuse was perfect, so he simply maintained a sense of mystery. Sir, I have my secrets, which I can't say. In short, my position is firmly with the coalition forces. He refused to answer this key question, which made the three of them feel uncomfortable. Since they couldn't ask, they didn't make things difficult for Wang Ling and kicked him out directly. Then they discussed the matter for a while in the base car, and finally decided to respect Wang Ling's wishes. Although Yuri is a high-ranking official, several of them are very unfamiliar with Yuri and have never been in contact with him. However, they have been with Wang Ling for a long time. They have witnessed Wang Ling's hard work step by step from a sergeant to a soldier. The most senior lieutenants had seen with their own eyes the miracles he had performed several times. In comparison, they preferred to favor Wang Ling. As for Wang Ling, after returning to the main army, although his body was running mechanically with the troops, his mind was actually in chaos. For him, Yuri has always been a hidden danger, but this hidden danger has an important position in the coalition headquarters, which makes him a little at a loss. Wang Ling now really hopes that Uncle He will drastically change the plot of the game and prevent Yuri from rebelling. However, no matter how much he asks Uncle He, this guy just refuses to tell and is so tight-lipped that Wang Ling is so angry that his teeth are itching. Hey, forget it, no matter what the future holds, at least Yuri is staying in the coalition and working for the coalition. There should be no problems in a short time. As for the future, I have already reminded the coach. I can't get involved in other things, just fight your own battle and that's it. After struggling for a while, Wang Ling finally successfully put these concerns behind him. The large army continued to advance. Although there were many people, the speed was not slow. After several hours of running around, the two major coalition bases finally broke into the front-line map of the decisive battlefield. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Different Dimension Red Alert World. Author, Sanqian Lang. Chapter 276. Buzz Buzz. Across. The two major coalition bases were assigned to garrison at a certain location on the front-line battlefield at the same time. After the large forces broke into the decisive battlefield, they were still running towards the goal. Being on the same battlefield and belonging to the same camp, many technologies of the coalition forces are common, including radar signals. After entering the front-line battlefield, Wang Ling's body was still running, but his mind had already received radar signals from major coalition bases. The electronic map in his subconscious was opened again, and Wang Ling was able to observe the scale and fighting conditions of this front-line battlefield. At this sight, Wang Ling was shocked. It is truly the front-line battlefield of the decisive battle. This map is huge, simply beyond imagination. The scale of the battlefield that Wang Ling and the others left before was already quite large. It would take almost a day to march from one end to the other. Even the speed of an anti-aircraft crawler vehicle would take several hours to achieve. But that battlefield pales in comparison to this one. Here, it's like several very large maps are spliced together. There are wetlands and rivers, mountains and snowy lakes, swamp deserts, Gobi Desert, forests, grasslands and cities. There is even a vast ocean, dotted with many islands, with varying degrees of material resources on the islands. Some are relatively scarce, with a bare island, but some are very rich, with gold mines all over the place, and many gem mines can be seen. What's more, there are even oil production plants and high-tech airports that have not yet been occupied, which can be described as a dazzling array of things. And these are only part of the decisive battlefield. The coalition's radar is very limited, and the areas that cannot be explored are completely black on the electronic map. At this stage of the decisive battle, the entire battlefield is full there are still about 40% of the area that has not been explored. Of course, most of these unexplored areas are concentrated in the ocean. The map area is large, and the scale of battles that can be accommodated has naturally reached an exaggerated level, far exceeding the limits of the Red Alert game. Nowadays, major bases are already stationed in some places on this map that are easy to defend and difficult to attack. The whole area is dotted. Looking at it from the electronic map, it looks quite spectacular. Among them, the coalition forces have more than 10 bases distributed. It is difficult to distinguish the base camps by color alone. The electronic map simply shows a uniform bright red, and each base is marked with a serial number. From number 1, the two of them the team has just arrived on the 15th and 16th. There are more than a dozen bases, each occupying various favorable terrains for defense and attack. Most of them have stabilized their bases and begun to expand outwards. However, there are also a few bases that set out yesterday and just arrived at the designated location today. After the deployment of troops, construction began in full swing. The situation of the Allied forces is similar to that of the Allied forces, but they have reached nearly 20 bases. The electronic map shows dark blue and is marked with serial numbers. Like the Allied forces also have many bases that seem to have just arrived and are still under construction. The lineups of both sides combined can only be described as spectacular. There are more than 30 bases competing against each other. This scene cannot be seen even in the game. Moreover, this is not the full strength of both sides. Whether it is the Allies or the coalition, there are still many bases fighting in stalemate on other battlefields, and there are also many bases on both sides that have ended the battle. Rushing towards this decisive battlefield, I am afraid that this decisive battlefield will become even more lively after a while. Of course, the excitement now was already exaggerated. When Wang Ling was observing the electronic map, he happened to see 4 Allied bases approaching the border. The lineup of this army is quite large, with more than 200 Allied soldiers, including nearly 10 SEALs, more than 30 Grizzly tanks, 8 Phantom tanks, and 8 multi-purpose infantry vehicles. There are 4 light prism tanks at the rear. Not to be outdone, the coalition forces stationed nearly 300 conscripts on the mountain stream, more than a dozen magnetic blast infantry, 8 anti-aircraft infantry, and 5 radiation engineers. Tanks and vehicles were also facing each other tit for tat. Nearly 30 Rhino tanks, 10 anti-aircraft tracked vehicles and 8 Apocalypse tanks, 3 of which are elite level. The battle for hegemony between the Allied forces and the coalition forces has reached this stage. Real fire has been fired, and there is no possibility of negotiation at all. As soon as the troops of the two sides met, a very fierce and cruel exchange of fire began. Every moment there was soldiers on both sides were killed and tanks were blown up. The scene was exciting. This battle lasted for a long time and finally came to an end with the Allied forces being wiped out. After all, the Allied forces were the defenders, occupying favorable terrain and waiting for work. Although the Allied forces were not bad in lineup, they still failed to break through this line of defense in the end. However, the cost of the coalition's victory was not small. Nearly half of the soldiers died in the battle, but the number of tanks lost was relatively small. After watching the entire battle, Wang Ling was speechless. A battle of this scale would almost be regarded as a decisive battle on any other battlefield, but on this decisive battlefield, it is just a normal battle. Compared with the huge number of bases on the entire battlefield, come on, this can only be regarded as a small-scale conflict. This is already the number for a small-scale battle. So what kind of scene would it be like if all the bases on the entire battlefield arrived and collectively launched a decisive battle? Wang Ling couldn't help but shudder when he imagined that scene. However, fortunately, on this decisive battlefield, fierce battles are not breaking out all the time. The major bases are basically dominated by wretched development, and most of the time they are in confrontation, which also gives it was time for both forces present to take a breath. After this small-scale battle ended, neither side sent troops to attack again for a long time. At best, it was just a large-scale mobilization and deployment of troops. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Wang Ling and his two coalition forces sped up a bit, hoping to reach their station as soon as possible. This time, the two coalition bases on the 15th and 16th were assigned to the same location. They were located on the edge of the front line of the battlefield. It was a seaside city surrounded by tall buildings, many of which had already been arranged for mobilization. Soldiers, expand the defense line, and temporarily garrison to ensure that the city will not be breached by the Allied forces. Inside the city, there is a large park space, which is the terminus of the two major coalition bases. Different Dimension Red Alert World. Author, Sanqian Lang. Chapter 277. Even though Wang Ling, the two major coalition bases, have already entered the decisive battlefield, this battlefield is really too big, and it takes quite a long journey from entering to getting into position. During this section of the road, the commanders of the two bases seemed to have seen the enormity of the battle situation, and they all felt a little impatient, urging the large troops to continue to speed up. But even so, it was not a matter of time to reach the designated place. The large army continued to march for about half a day. Seeing that it was getting late, they only traveled less than half the distance. There was no other way, people were as good as rice and steel, and it was not advisable to march at high intensity all the time. The troops simply chose a place to stop, had dinner in turns, rested for 2 hours, and set off collectively again, marching all night. For several hours, until late at night, we barely made it halfway, and then we stopped to camp for the night. This position is behind many coalition bases, and with their protection, there is no need to worry about Allied night attacks. However, being cautious, the two commanders still arranged for some soldiers to take turns on duty while the others slept peacefully. And Wang Ling was the same as before. He contacted Uncle He and returned to the real world. After resting for a day, he came to the red alert world again, closed his eyes and fell asleep. Early the next morning, the large troops woke up, had breakfast, ignored morning exercises, and quickly set off to the designated location. According to the speed of the troops, if nothing unexpected happens, they will almost be in place this afternoon. Along the road, Wang Ling was running and observing the electronic map. On the battlefield, the war was changing rapidly. After yesterday's battle, both camps rested and developed for a long time, and today they began their expedition again. However, the side that sent troops was replaced by the coalition camp. 3 coalition bases joined forces and dispatched more than 300 conscripts, 10 magnetic explosive infantry, more than 30 Rhino tanks, 10 anti-aircraft tracked vehicles, and 8 Apocalypse tanks, 5 magnetic energy tanks, formed a combined army and rushed towards the nearest Allied base. The location of this Allied base is not too high, but it is surrounded by woods and rivers, with only a few paths accessible. When the coalition forces were gathering troops, this Allied base was not idle either. It sent soldiers to block various intersections, and even dispatched more than 10 phantom tanks to ambush in the woods. At the same time, the two surrounding Allied bases also start sending troops for reinforcements. The coalition army's marching speed was not too fast. It took more than 6 hours before they successfully broke into the sphere of influence of the coalition base. After gathering, they launched an attack. But as soon as the attack began, it was met with a head-on attack by the Allies. The first to open fire was the Phantom tank hidden in the woods. With the help of the cover of the woods, the charging coalition forces could not find traces of these Phantom tanks for a while. As a result, the Phantom tanks went crazy. Every time a gun was fired, one conscript must die. Even the Rhino tank could not withstand it. How many guns, magnetic tanks, and anti-aircraft tracked vehicles are more fragile? The Apocalypse tank can withstand beatings, but it cannot withstand the concentrated fire of so many Phantom tanks. If it is targeted, it will be destroyed quickly. It happened that there were 4 elite-level tanks in this Phantom tank, and they fired at an extremely high frequency. As the large troops rushed through the woods, the number of casualties was close to 1/3. At this time, the coalition forces had also entered the river range, and were immediately blocked by the defenders. The coalition forces finally found their target and began a fierce counterattack. When there is a war, there are sacrifices. Whether it is a victory or a defeat, when the two sides are fighting, soldiers die tragically all the time, leaving corpses everywhere. These corpses simply will not be left in this game world, and they will disappear soon, otherwise the scene, not to mention how scary it is. The fighting between the two sides was very fierce. Although the Allied forces once again blocked the main road, their numbers were small after all, and they soon showed a decline. But just when the defense line was about to be torn apart, the Allied reinforcements had already arrived. 2 major troops, one on the left and one on the right, ran rampant. Under the powerful firepower, all the coalition troops were quickly annihilated. This attack failed. At the same time, several other Allied bases also began to gather large armies, and it seemed that another round of onslaught would be launched soon. The several coalition bases corresponding to them were also restless. They quickly mobilized their troops and divided their troops to garrison various dangerous roads. Judging from the previous 2 offensive and defensive situations, this Allied attack may also end in failure. Originally, the base they wanted to attack was not weak in strength, and with other bases eyeing it eagerly and ready to assist at any time, how difficult was it to win? Although this is a decisive battlefield, unless both sides come out in full force to fight, or one side is completely beaten, the war here will only be more stalemate and longer lasting than other battlefields. A fight like this, just for the sake of hegemony. Wang Ling couldn't help but sigh after imagining the casualties this war would cause. However, he is open-minded. This is a game world after all, not real, so there is no need to be too pretentious. When it's time to do it, you have to do it fiercely. If you are soft on the Allies, the comrades around him will probably die in front of him. Even if he knew this was a virtual world, Wang Ling could not bear the consequences. After recovering from the electronic map, Wang Ling stopped thinking about it and continued to follow the troops. The 2 bases continued to march for several hours, and finally arrived at the coastal city. Under the escort of the large army, the 2 base vehicles successfully arrived at the large square in the center of the city, and then in front of everyone, it was quickly deployed and expanded into 2 coalition base command posts. After the base is in place, the next step is naturally a series of construction and defense. At this time, the engineers of the bug branch also began to show off their skills. A large number of engineers appeared out of thin air from the command post and built the most rudimentary power plants on the spot around the command post. The engineers are not slow, but they are building buildings after all, and they cannot be completed in a short while. If you want to restore the base to its original appearance, even if you have sufficient funds, it will take a long time. During this period, the command post was not idle. It quickly mobilized troops and began the task of deploying defenses. The city site is also a place that is easy to defend but difficult to attack. After receiving the order to mobilize troops, each team dispatched their mobilization troops to garrison the surrounding buildings. Once soldiers are stationed in the building, it directly turns into a special bunker. When the soldiers in the building find the enemy, they can fire directly from the building. The more soldiers there are, the stronger the firepower will be, and the range will also increase accordingly. If you want to raid, you have to destroy the building and annihilate all the guards in the building. The base has just arrived at the position and needs time to develop, and these buildings will naturally become natural barriers at this time. But the strange thing is that each team leader is sending soldiers to select buildings to settle in, but Wang Ling remains unmoved. Others are busy, but he is looking at the electronic map by himself. Soon after, he even smiles solemnly, obviously not what a good idea. Different Dimension Red Alert World. Author, Sanqian Lang. Chapter 278. Wang Ling, why are you so stunned? Why haven't the Wolf Squad started taking action yet? Soon, Wang Ling and the Wolf team were aware of something unusual, and the voice of King Xiaoping came over the radio. Wang Ling happened to want to find him. Taking this opportunity, he gave a military salute and hurriedly said, "Brother Zhao, the Wolf Squad will naturally take action, but it is not to set up defenses. I just took a closer look at the Allied forces lineup." Without waiting for King Xiaoping to question anything, Wang Ling quickly told his plan, and finally asked for instructions. Step-by-step development is certainly safe, but the enemy will also develop, and the decisive battle will be extended indefinitely. So if I have the chance, I will naturally take the wrong approach. Sir, Wolf Squad, please come out to fight. Zhao Pingwang was a little confused for a while, but it was Rovitsky who complained, "I said, can't you just live in peace?" As soon as we arrived at the designated location, a power plant was built in 2 bases, including ore refining. The factory hasn't even been built yet, and you're about to cause trouble. Does your place keep your butt warm? What does this mean? We have to stand all the time, okay? Wang Ling was speechless about this guy. Of course, no matter how unhappy Rovitsky is, he is not the one who really makes the decision. Then the voice of General Li Wiki came from the radio, "You are so dishonest even on the battlefield of the decisive battle." Well, what you said makes sense. This time I ask for a fight, for sure. The enemy will catch up with you. They are unlucky for such an outlier. However, please remember that safety must be the first priority in this operation. If the enemy overreacts or large-scale reinforcements are dispatched, you must retreat immediately and cannot be reluctant to fight. Yes, sir, Wang Ling cheered after hearing this, and after another military salute, he turned off the radio. If you get permission to petition, you will be busy next. At the base, Major General Li Wiki contacted General Luo Er and told Wang Ling's plan. After hearing this, General Luo Er touched his big head and was amazed for a while, but he would not be stingy with the necessary cooperation. Under the coordination of the 2 commanders and Wang Ling, all the Apocalypse tanks of the Wolf Squad were put out, and a few more were specially added. 8 tanks were assembled, and they opened the road in advance and headed towards the Allied forces. After the Apocalypse tanks, came the Rhino tanks, which were also mainly Wolf Squad tanks. A few more were added to make up 10 tanks. After waiting for a while, they also rushed out of the city and rushed towards the Allied camp. After the Rhino tank, there are conscripts and anti-aircraft tracked vehicles. Here, Wang Ling put in a lot of effort, not only taking out all the anti-aircraft tracked vehicles of the Wolf team, but also recruiting the tracked vehicles of other teams. In the end, the number was still not enough, so he borrowed it from General Luo Er's base. A few vehicles were collected, and 30 vehicles were collected. Then, everyone, including Wang Ling, came out, and a large number of elite soldiers were drawn from each squad, enough to make up 150 people, and then they all got into the anti-aircraft tracked vehicles. After everyone was in place, they waited for another 2 hours, and then the large-scale transport convoy set off. The front foot has just arrived at the front-line city, and the back foot is about to launch a massive attack. The answer is: that's right. Of course, this attack was not a random request by Wang Ling. After he arrived here, he checked the map and found that there was an Allied base under construction in the Gobi Desert not too far away from them. The base has obviously just arrived on the battlefield not long ago, and its construction is only in the early stages. There are only 3 or 2 light prism towers, and even the crack generator has not been built yet. With the help of electronic video, the situation inside the base can be seen at a glance. Which base is easier to resolve the battle quickly and arrive at this decisive battlefield? If this Allied base develops for a long time, it will definitely become a strong enemy. It is better to concentrate firepower to destroy it in advance before it can recover the combat effectiveness of its heyday. Although this base also has a large number of soldiers and tanks left behind after the victory as a team, Wang Ling is very confident in himself and the Wolf team and can take advantage of this opportunity to take over this base. Of course, the premise is that this Allied base does not go to the reinforcements. For this battlefield, there are no reinforcements in case of war. The possibility was too small, so Wang Ling made such a first-hand arrangement to transport all the large mobilization troops on anti-aircraft tracked vehicles, which greatly shortened the march time. They fought at lightning speed and had to push back completely before the arrival of Allied reinforcements. At this base, the mission has been completed. When they first heard about this plan, Major General Li Wiki and the other 3 were really startled. According to Major Rovitsky, this was simply nonsense. However, Wang Ling is just a fool. In the previous battles, when did he not take the wrong approach and hit the Allies with miraculous results? With those precedents in mind, Major General Li Wiki could agree so happily. Of course, the 3 of them knew Wang Ling relatively well, so they were able to boldly take action, but the commanders and deputies of other bases were different. While building bases and deploying troops, these commanders were naturally paying attention to the electronic map and the movements of the enemy and ourselves on the entire battlefield. Of course, they also saw the actions of the base on the 15th and 16th time showed shocked expressions one after another. Are these 2 bases crazy? They just arrived on the battlefield and haven't even had a firm footing yet. Now they want to attack. So anxious. Who is the commander of these 2 bases? Li Wiki? Logo ER? These 2 people's bases. If Logo ER is a bit of a fool, he might do something like this, but Li Wiki is not very calm on weekdays. Why are you so greedy for success today? The ore refinery hasn't even come out yet, so we sent our troops to attack. Why are we in such a hurry? What if we lose our troops? Can we survive here with only reinforcements? Hey, these 2 bases are too impulsive. The Allied base they want to attack is still under construction and has insufficient combat effectiveness. No wonder it is targeted. However, there are also a lot of veterans on the Allied side. This force cannot be ignored. This 15th and 10th base number 6, want to launch a surprise attack with just these troops. The commanders of all the major bases were muttering. Most of them thought that the 2 bases were too anxious, and some were simply confused. In short, no one was optimistic about them. Even General Zhao Wuji, who had talked with Major Generals Li Wiki and Logo ER before, personally connected the radios of the 2 bases and asked what was going on. But Major General Li Wiki just said that he should watch the show, which seemed very mysterious. Seeing that nothing could be asked, General Zhao Wuji simply fell silent and, like other commanders, stared at the electronic video with all his concentration. Wang Ling had no time to pay attention to these doubts now. Now he sat in the tracked vehicle and was still running with the large army. After running around for so long, the sun has already set. In normal times, even on the battlefield, the major bases would have taken turns to rest. However, there is a lunatic like Wang Ling tonight, and I am afraid that I will not be able to sleep well. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Different Dimension Red Alert World. Author, Sanqian Lang. Chapter 279. To put it bluntly, Wang Ling's thoughts tonight actually came from games. When I played games before, I often encountered enemies who were very close to the enemy at the beginning. Both sides started fighting before they had time to build a base. When watching other people play, another enemy base is usually destroyed right at the start, but when Wang Ling controls it, it is often destroyed right at the start. Who made Wang Ling's slow control inconvenient? However, it is different in the world of Red Alert. The soldiers in the army have their own thinking and are easy to command. Moreover, after previous battles, most of the team members are 3-star elites and are very strong. Coupled with the fact that Wang Ling, the king of 10-star soldiers who transcends common sense, fights at lightning speed, it may be the enemy's turn to be unlucky this time. The map of this decisive battlefield is very large. When the two armies attacked each other before, it would take about half a day for both armies to march and attack. These are two bases that are relatively close to each other. But in fact, many of them were waiting for the infantry for such a long time. After all, the infantry's marching speed was too slow. Because of this, Wang Ling specially mobilized a large number of anti-aircraft tracked vehicles to transport infantry, which greatly shortened the marching time. It only took less than 2 hours from departure to entering the Gobi Desert. The Rhino tank was not too slow. It arrived at the designated location one step ahead and was waiting. The Apocalypse tank was a little slower. After the infantry got off the car and got into position, they continued to wait for more than 10 minutes before arriving. Such a team came unexpectedly, and the target base had observed it in advance. Of course, it was impossible for them to be unprepared. On this Gobi Desert, there are rugged rocks and tall and thick stone pillars. The Gobi Desert is naturally arranged with many roads. There are many intersections to enter the Allied base, but only the ones that can allow the army to enter. 2. Now this Allied base has gathered soldiers and various tanks at the intersection, and even took the time to build a light prism tower and 2 machine gun bunkers at the intersection to guard it. From the observation on the electronic map, reinforcements have also been sent to 2 other Allied bases that are relatively close. However, these 2 bases seem to underestimate Wang Ling and the Wolf Squad. The scale of the reinforcements was not large. At most, there were hundreds of soldiers and more than a dozen tanks. Looking at the speed, it would take at least 2 hours to get here. Time. But if they were to arrive, and they would be attacked from both inside and outside, the Wolf Squad would probably be left with nothing to eat. Time was running out. After all the lineups had arrived, Wang Ling had no time to take a rest and hurriedly gave the order, "Brothers, this time we are conducting a surprise attack and a lightning operation. The victory is better than surprise. The time cannot be delayed too long, otherwise reinforcements will be sent once we arrive, we will be passive. Everyone and all the tanks listen to my orders and give me a good humming beating while ensuring their own safety." Roar. The members of the Wolf team had long been accustomed to Wang Ling's methods and had no doubts about this surprise attack. A roar came out in response to Wang Ling's call. Although the temporary supplementary members were a little skeptical, they were also overwhelmed by the roar. He started to move, and his eyes showed a passionate fighting spirit. Without further ado, after Wang Ling finished speaking, the large forces quickly approached the Allied base under his command. As I said before, there are many roads in the Gobi Desert. There are two main roads, but there are also many small roads. The Allied base number 18 has dispatched guards at various intersections, but most of the troops are concentrated on the two main roads. Wang Ling left the large force on the main road, out of the fire range of the guards. However, he alone took 3 3-star elite Apocalypse tanks, 5 elite anti-aircraft crawlers, and more than 20 3-star soldiers. The elite mobilization troops made a big detour and went to a small road. There were only 2 machine gun bunkers and more than a dozen Allied soldiers stationed on the small road they were targeting. This kind of guarding force was really fragile to Wang Ling. After approaching, Wang Ling quickly changed his arms and returned to the 10-star soldier King Magnetic Explosion Infantry. Although he has switched arms twice in a row, Wang Ling's mental strength in the psychic troops is insufficient and is far from reaching war standards. The 1-star veteran anti-aircraft infantry is even unable to cope with this situation. In the end, he is still the magnetic explosion infantry. Works well. After switching arms, Wang Ling shot a large electromagnetic current from a long distance, covering more than a dozen Allied soldiers in an instant, causing them to lose health quickly. After all, these Allied soldiers have been baptized by war. They are led by 3 3-star elite soldiers and have very strong firepower. However, Wang Ling didn't need to care at all. Every inch longer and stronger, Wang Ling's shooting range was much longer than theirs, and his electric range was extremely large. No matter how powerful his firepower was, he was just a target in front of Wang Ling. The dozen or so Allied soldiers were attacked, their original deployment was disrupted, and they all fell to the ground. The unranked soldiers could only struggle hard, but the health bar was shrinking too fast. They couldn't hold on for long before they were electrocuted to death. Those 3-star elites were more resistant to beatings. After falling to the ground, they even crawled forward, thinking of counterattacking. However, the distance between the two sides was too far after all, and the electromagnetic attack was too strong. They were only more powerful than those ordinary soldiers. After holding on for a while, he was electrocuted to death. With one shot, all the guarding soldiers were wiped out, but Wang Ling was still not satisfied and immediately fired at one of the machine gun bunkers. The machine gun bunker could not withstand such an attack, and its health bar was reduced extremely quickly. During this time, the 3 elite Apocalypse tanks were also idle. Under Wang Ling's command, they quickly moved forward and fired explosive shells together, demolishing another machine gun bunker almost in the blink of an eye. At this time, the machine gun bunker targeted by Wang Ling finally couldn't hold on anymore. It quickly lost its health and was completely exploded. Led by Wang Ling, this team was really strong. All the guards along the way did not cause them much trouble at all. However, after being lost along the way, the Allied base number 18 did not panic. Instead, it quickly mobilized the guard forces at other intersections to rush to help and encircle it. Wang Ling was also merciless. All the Allied troops who entered his range were covered by a large arc of electricity, almost destroying as many as they came. In less than 10 minutes, the gourd boy saved his grandfather, and there were 30 more than a dozen Allied soldiers died under Wang Ling's arc. At this time, the Allied base was also a little anxious. The 6 Phantom tanks and 4 Prism tanks that were on standby inside the base immediately dispatched to kill Wang Ling first. But after Wang Ling observed it, he immediately stopped and retreated. However, the 3 elite Apocalypse pushed forward and soon faced off against the Phantom tanks. Under the powerful artillery fire, all Phantom tanks were temporarily blocked and were destroyed. Explode quickly. Next came the light Prism tank. The range of this thing was too long. Wang Ling didn't dare to let it get close, so the Apocalypse tank braved the bombardment of the light Prism tower and moved forward for a certain distance, temporarily detonating all the light Prism tanks. The destruction of this mighty Prism tank finally attracted the attention of the Allied base's biggest weapon, the tank killer. 3 3-star elites led the team, and a total of 8 tank killers came fiercely, aiming directly at the Apocalypse tank. Different Dimension Red Alert World. Author, Sanqian Lang. Chapter 280. If there are 8 Grizzly tanks, then 3 Elite Apocalypse can easily deal with them. At best, one of them will be seriously injured. But there are a total of 8 tank killers, and 3 of them are 3-star elites. With this lineup, the Elite Apocalypse tank bar has no good results. However, Wang Ling's command was very damaging, so he would not be stupid enough to use the Apocalypse tank to touch the tank killer. He gave a temporary order and the 3 Elite Apocalypse tanks ignored the light prism tower that had been bombarding and quickly retreated. But Wang Ling personally led 20 elite mobilization troops to block it. The scale of the battlefield has expanded, the enemy's combat effectiveness has increased, and the overall difficulty has also increased. Some of Wang Ling's usual combat tactics have also lost their effectiveness. But as Uncle He said, nothing changes but the same. At least in the current game process, the advantages and disadvantages of various types of tanks have not changed, and the conflict between the types of tanks is still very obvious. The army of tank killers is enough to crush 3 Elite Apocalypse tanks, but it has little lethality against infantry. With this premise, what worries does Wang Ling have? After leading the team to replace Tiankai, they began to bombard the approaching army of tank killers from a long distance away. There were a total of 8 tank killers, but the arrangement was very loose. Wang Ling's round of electric shock only covered 4 of them, and the first 3 were even at the elite level. Being enveloped by Wang Ling's electromagnetic force, the health bars of these 4 tank killers were also rapidly shrinking, and even their forward speed was affected and gradually slowed down. After all, it is a special tank unit. After all, this tank killer is relatively resistant to beatings. It advanced against Wang Ling's electromagnetic bombardment, but when it arrived in front of the team, it still had about 1/3 of its health. The ungraded tank, the tank killer, is a bit worse, with almost no health remaining. But it didn't matter. Wang Ling didn't expect to be able to destroy them at this distance. When the tank killers approached, the 20 elite mobilization soldiers also opened fire. The 4 tank killers, who had already suffered a serious loss of health, simply couldn't kill them. As long as he could hold on, he would be completely blown away. Subsequently, the other 4 tank killers far away from each other also broke into this place, and Wang Ling and the army of mobilization troops immediately began to block them. Being temporarily attacked, these 4 tank killers seemed unwilling to give up their target. The barrels shook slightly, and then they fired at the conscript closest to them. However, the tank killers did almost no damage to the infantry, and they did not regenerate blood as quickly as the elite soldiers. As a result, after firing several shots in a row, the squad was not damaged at all, but 2 more tank killers were blown up. The remaining 2 vehicles had lost half of their HP. Seeing the situation reverse in an instant, the 2 brothers gave up on the bombardment and tried to run through the team at full power. Tank killers are a wiser approach to dealing with conscripts. However, the premise is that they can hit each other. Wang Ling's electromagnetic attack was not only powerful, but the most annoying thing for them was the deceleration effect. They couldn't move forward at full speed. However, the 20 mobilization soldiers still fired with all their strength. As a result, the 2 unlucky brothers just came into contact with each other. One of the conscripts who reached the forefront was blown up before he could get through. 8 tank killers, all destroyed. The Allied base number 18 did not seem to expect that the small team was so insidious and used troops specifically to target them. These simple exchanges of fire caught them off guard. However, precisely because of this, the base commander became a little angry. The 10 rocket pilots who were originally flying over the main road received the order and turned to Wang Ling's team. Even the soldiers and tanks, a group was mobilized, and it seemed that they were determined to destroy this small team. However, this suited Wang Ling's heart. With a sinister smile and a wave of his hand, 5 elite anti-aircraft tracked vehicles immediately rushed to the rear of the mobilization troops, waiting to ambush the rocket pilots at any time. Elite Apocalypse tanks were also dispatched to block the way. In front of the infantry, while acting as a shield, it gave the Allies a head-on attack. After all, they were flying here, and the speed of the rocket pilots was really not slow. Wang Ling had just set up their formation, and the mallets had already arrived. 10 rocket pilots, half of the 3-star elites, let them open fire, which is naturally very powerful. However, anti-aircraft tracked vehicles can defeat this thing, and there are 5 elite level ones here. The 10 rocket pilots had just approached, and before they had time to react, the 5 elite tracked vehicles had already started to fire. The continuous firing of briquette shells caused splash damage. The 10 rocket pilots were stunned and were all shot down without even being able to fire a single shot. After the rocket pilots, multifunctional infantry vehicles and grizzly tanks also approached one after another. As a result, they were bombarded by Wang Ling in the distance, and bombarded by the elite Apocalypse nearby. Even closer, 20 elite mobilization troops concentrated fire. As a result, after charging for so long, they only disabled 1 conscript, consumed half of the HP of an Apocalypse, and were all annihilated. Then came hundreds of Allied soldiers. Hundreds of soldiers gathered together, and the crowd surged, which was quite spectacular. However, Wang Ling liked to clear out troops on a large scale, so he launched an electromagnetic attack from a distance. Nearly 50 soldiers were all electrocuted, and they were electrocuted to death before they could stand for long. The remaining 50 soldiers reluctantly came over, but what greeted them was the concentrated fire of Apocalypse tanks, Wang Ling, and mobilization troops. As a result, hundreds of Allied soldiers were all killed, and they were unable to deal with this small team. How much damage is caused? At this moment, Wang Ling seemed to have heard the roar coming from the Allied command post. How many of them are missing out on being able to come to the space for the decisive battle? All of them have fought and won battles. There are many elite soldiers in the base. Who doesn't have their own pride? But now, just after arriving at this decisive battlefield, I encountered such a lunatic who did not follow common sense. The base has not been built yet, and this guy has already sent troops to attack. If you want to attack, just attack, but this guy's firepower is just like cheating, it's really scary. And they even more insidiously used restrained troops to deal with their counterattacks. As a result, after these frictions, this loss is called heartache, liver pain, stomach pain, lung pain, kidney pain, in short, it hurts everywhere. Are the current coalition forces already so strong? However, it was this kind of loss that made the base commander completely angry. With an order, nearly half of the troops at the main intersection were instantly mobilized, threatening to destroy this girl at all costs. Observing the enemy's movements from the electronic map, Wang Ling was not surprised but overjoyed. He quickly shouted over the radio, "Dahua, the large force is under your command for the time being. Now it's time to charge."